Get up, everyone. It is game day. What to expect from the Orlando Magic as they take on the Detroit Pistons to open the 2023 regular season. It's time for Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is October 19th, 2022, the start of a new era, the first day of the NBA regular season for the Orlando Magic. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the site expert and editor over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. Of course, follow me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, we're going to get you ready for tonight's game, talk a little bit about Paolo Banchero, what to expect from him, what to expect from the team in general, and yeah, do a quick scout on the Detroit Pistons because it's game day, baby. Before we do any of that, though, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day, no matter when you're listening to us, whether it's right when you wake up, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right when we upload, whether it's on your way to tonight's Orlando Magic watch party at Elixir in downtown Orlando. We truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. Remember, there's a great Locked On podcast covering every single team in the NBA, including our friends in Detroit. Check out Ku Khahil and the Detroit Pistons at Locked On Pistons. We did a podcast with them a few weeks ago as well to preview this matchup specifically, so check that out too. You can find that in our archives. Remember, the Locked On Podcast Network, it's your team every day. Today's podcast is also brought to you by PrizePicks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. That's PrizePicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. Obviously, today is a day of great excitement, of great anticipation, of just... It's what we've been waiting for. To be perfectly frank, the preseason's fun because you start to get all this data, you start to kind of see this team, you start to feel this team, but everyone knows the preseason is the preseason. Everyone knows the preseason is half-truths and things that are hidden. It's not the real deal. It's not the regular season. Players aren't playing regular minutes. The coaches are still experimenting and testing things out, and that's certain to still happen. But this is the show. This is where we really find out who this team is. And while we have some ideas and there's a lot to be excited about with the Magic, this is where we really find out what works, what doesn't work, and begin this awesome, awesome journey. This is just the first day of the season always brings with it excitement. And I really love Jamal Mosley's approach to this, really embracing this excitement. Really embracing the energy and the joy and the joy of playing this game, of playing games that count, taking it all seriously, of course, because ultimately at the end of the day we're all judged on wins and losses, or this team is, at least I'm not. I don't want to lose anything, but taking this moment. Not taking this moment for granted and taking a special, taking an opportunity in this. Obviously, when we break down the storylines of tonight's game, it all starts with the reason that this is the opening night game. The reason why this is the game the NBA chose to start the Orlando Magic with, and I probably will not hear arguments to the contrary. The NBA wanted to pit the two past number one picks against each other on opening night. Paolo Banchero versus Cade Cunningham. And while this is a really interesting and fun matchup between two up-and-coming teams, their futures are pinned to these young players. Now, I think to the Magic's credit, to Jamal Mosley's credit, and I think this is something that happened with Detroit last year too. Cade Cunningham did miss opening night last year because of an injury and struggled a little bit through the early parts of his season. So how Paolo does tonight isn't so important. It's what happens next. It's how he builds and grows and develops, although I think Paolo will do just fine. But the Magic have done a really good job just making sure that Paolo doesn't have too much on his plate. They've experimented, they've tested some things out with him, but Paolo is going to find his offense in the flow of the offense. They're not asking him to go out there, take 20 shots, and win games. Wendell Carter even said it best. We're not expecting him to score 40 right off the bat. Those career nights are going to come. Trust me. I'm paraphrasing what Wendell said. But we're the kind of team that have enough guys that can carry that scoring load so that Paolo can get used to the NBA. And I think, when it comes to Paolo Banchero specifically, that is what you need to expect. The little moments, the little pockets where Paolo looks like the star. I am sure I mentioned it here. I know I talked about it a little bit last year as well. When Jalen Suggs struggled out of the gate, I looked at how guards specifically, Trae Young, Donovan Mitchell, John Morant specifically, how they fared early on in their careers. Because I remember all three kind of struggled and had their miscues and missteps. But there was one common theme that I saw with all of them. Within the first 3 weeks of the season, they all had burst games. And what I mean by burst games are games that feel normal to us now, where they had 25 points and took over games. And I do believe, and maybe I need to do a bigger study on this, but I do believe you will see early signs of who Paolo Banchero can be. Just like we saw early signs about Franz and perhaps early signs about Jalen, because Jalen never really quite rose to the level that we all anticipated he could. So the pressure is not on Paolo Banchero tonight. Let's just not fret if he has an 8-point game tonight. Please do not do that. For tonight, the important thing for Paolo Banchero is that he is playing within the offense, playing within himself, not trying to force too many things. Holding his own physically, on defense especially, but finding his way to his spots, whether he makes or misses those shots. And that he looks like he is a fit in what the Magic are trying to do. Those are the important points to draw out tonight about Paolo Banchero. Those are the important things to watch for, the important things that Paolo Banchero has to do. There is no doubt going to be some nerves for the rookie. He looked a little nervous in his first preseason game, although certainly not in his first Summer League game. But I believe that, just watching Paolo and watching the way that he carries himself, whatever nerves he has are going to go away quickly. And as we saw in preseason, he is going to get comfortable very, very fast. Comfortable within his role, comfortable with what the Magic are asking him to do, just comfortable. And that is where we will see him take a big leap. That is where we will see him kind of find his level, find where he will contribute. And that is where we're going to see him really develop and grow. There's a lot of reasons to be excited about this team. And yes, Paolo Banchero is absolutely one of them. And he is absolutely one of the things that I am watching tonight. Not with a critical eye, because I think he deserves some space to grow. But undoubtedly, he is a player that can transform this team. We saw a little bit of it during the preseason. How his shooting and shot-making ability is something this Magic team, frankly, has not had in a very long time. It's going to be exciting to watch him play. It's going to be exciting to watch him grow. We just got to give it time. We just got to give time for that seed to germinate and play and grow. So tonight won't be everything, or maybe it will. Who knows? But tonight will be the beginning. A really fun beginning for Paolo Banchero. We'll talk a little bit about what to expect from the Orlando Magic in general before we break down the Detroit Pistons a little bit. We'll do that coming up here in just a moment. But first, a quick word from our pals at PrizePicks. Let me pull this up. There it is. Tonight is a full slate of NBA games. A full slate of games. And you're probably looking for a daily fantasy option to make the games more enjoyable. It's a full slate of NBA. Everyone is available, essentially. So if you think that, actually, let me pull up exactly what the numbers are tonight on PrizePicks if you're looking to play the Orlando Magic's game against the Detroit Pistons. So let me load it up here. I got my got my phone. It is actually asking me to log in, which is not good for me because this is not working out the way that I want to. But in any case, if you're looking to play a fun daily fantasy game that allows you to play the Orlando Magic game as much as anything else, well, you got to try PrizePicks. Here's how it works. PrizePicks provides daily numbers projections for every single team in the NBA, for every single team in the NFL, for a ton of players. I've actually got it pulled up here. You look at the number projections and you make a grouping, a PrizePicks grouping of what you think is going to happen. So if you think Cole Anthony is going to score more than 15.5 points, Wendell Carter more than 16.5 points, Paolo Banchero more than 13.5 points in tonight's game, or Franz Wagner more than 14 points, I might put a lot of the overs on a lot of these things. Then you go to PrizePicks, you take the overs on all those players. You pick 2 to 5 players, and they score more or less in their PrizePicks projections. You can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. There's no competing against other people, so you're not dealing with sharks who flood those entries with tons of picks to make sure they win. It's just you versus projections available. And it's not just the NBA that they have available. You can get NFL games, MLB, NHL, PGA, college football, men's college basketball, women's college basketball, soccer, WNBA, on and on and on and on and on. There's so many options available with PrizePicks. You can even do mixed sport entries if you want to hit the Magic game tonight and NFL games on Thursday. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's really that easy. Safe and fast withdrawals, currently operational in more than 30 states, including here in Florida and Canada. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports today. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. So don't forget to enter promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for an instant deposit match of up to $100. Don't forget now that the NBA season has begun to check out Locked On to make game-to-game NBA. This is a new thing. Make game-to-game NBA your second listen. Every moment, every top performance, every result, Locked On game-to-game covers every game from across the NBA with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow game-to-game on Locked On NBA, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. So the Orlando Magic as a team, what are we expecting tonight? I would say this, first and foremost, the NBA is on the first game of the NBA season is always a little bit unpredictable. As a point of history, which means nothing moving forward, the Orlando Magic are 19-14 overall in opening night games, home, road, whatever. First game of the season, the Magic are 19-14 in their 33-year history. They have won a lot of these games, but like so many other things, and it's an 82-game season, it's a long season, these games can be random because you just don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how teams are going to mix. You don't really know, you don't know how long guys can go. Ever since they shortened the preseason a little bit, the first couple weeks of the season have always been a little bit hectic. Just because players are still working themselves into shape. Their minutes are starting to ramp up to their normal levels. There's still a major adjustment period going on. So, we will look for patterns, and certainly you can't throw these first 2-3 weeks away, but there's going to be a lot of randomness. Matt Moore of the Action Network always says this about the regular season, and I tend to agree. The first 2 weeks, and really the last 2 to 3 weeks, you just throw out because there's just so much randomness. The meat of the season is where you really start to separate teams, separate players, and all that. Having said that, this, like the preseason, is where you need to start seeing the team take some necessary steps forward. I would say this. I was really impressed with how the Magic improved throughout the course of the preseason. I say this every year. My goal for any team in the preseason is to be better each progressive day. I think the Magic really did that. I think their defense really settled in, as long as they're not turning the ball over, that the fouling was the biggest issue. And that's the biggest thing that could derail the Magic tonight and derail the Magic early in the season. is they just got to get their timing down defensively and not foul as much. Half-court defense, they were still pretty solid. So as long, one of my big keys tonight is the Magic do got to keep Detroit off the free throw line. I watched the first half of Detroit's game against Memphis from last week. It's preseason, so there's only so much you can grab, but Detroit's a team that will take advantage of mistakes. Whether it's Cade Cunningham getting downhill into the lane and kicking out to a guy like Sadiq Bey or Bojan Bogdanovic, or Isaiah Stewart gobbling up offensive rebounds, you've got to be solid in your fundamentals against this Detroit team. That is my big takeaway. Is they are a team that will struggle. They're like the Magic. They're still super super young, but you've got to be solid in those fundamentals. And so for the Magic, what are those fundamentals? It is taking quality shots on offense so you don't give up transition, protecting the ball, protecting your possessions, valuing your possessions. It is defending without fouling, not giving those extra opportunities. And honestly, it's a little bit about making shots too. I think, Magic finished last year 19th in defensive rating. And after the All-Star break, they were, I think, 7th or 8th in defensive rating. But their weakness was still, they took a lot of bad shots offensively. That led to long rebounds. That led to transition opportunities. And that's where the Magic couldn't get their defense set and really kind of lock in and get going. If the Magic want to be a good defensive team this year, they've got to score a little bit. It's really kind of that simple. They got to score a little bit. And that is something that the Magic have to do a little bit better at, to be perfectly honest. Offense is still going to be this team's weakness. And I think we saw some really important strides offensively. There were a lot of really encouraging moments and signs offensively. There's still going to, through the course of this game, there's going to be moments where the Magic look pretty awful. That's just going to be reality, I think. That this team is going to have moments where they just look awful. And that's okay. You could take those growing pains. One thing Orlando focused on throughout all of training camp is limiting mistakes. And it's not just limiting mistakes, it's limiting repeated mistakes. And Orlando's going to make mistakes. They're going to do some bad things. They're still learning. And like when they talk about accountability, when they talk about doing all this, Coach Mosley is not saying they're not going to make mistakes and they're not going to have to correct things and practice and walk and shoot arounds and walkthroughs and all that stuff. That's not what he's saying. What I think they're really focused on is making sure mistakes don't snowball. And honestly, I thought this was something the Magic did really good at in the preseason, where they would make mistakes. They would go through a stretch where maybe their offense wasn't working, but the mistakes wouldn't snowball. They'd be able to grab a grip and get back into the game. Outside of maybe the first quarter against Dallas when Luka Doncic went off, maybe the second quarter in that first game against Memphis, but Memphis made their run, Orlando answered back. Cleveland made their run, Orlando answered back. San Antonio made a run, Orlando crawled back into that game before their starters left too. This is going to be the key. And this is such a big key for the whole season, is, making a 2-minute stretch, limiting a bad offensive stretch or limiting a bad stretch of play to 2 minutes instead of 5. I say this all the time, one of the things that I believe about the NBA is the difference between college and the NBA is 8 minutes. 8 minutes of 40 to 48 minutes is the difference between these two sports, these two levels. And those 8 minutes are everything. I probably said this a million times last year. I'll probably use this analogy again this year. Last year, the Magic could probably play about 42 minutes of solid basketball. Those 6 minutes, though, can kill you. You've got to be able to play 48 minutes. You've got to be able to go the distance playing solid basketball. And if you get to 46, you could survive. You could survive playing 46 minutes of solid basketball. Again, it's if you get what I'm saying. If the Magic can make those 42 minutes that they played well last year into 44, into 46, into 48, then all of a sudden you're in business. All of a sudden you're doing something different. You're doing something special. And that's what you got to watch out for. When do the Magic go cold tonight? And how do they get themselves out of it? That's going to be, honestly, That's the biggest place that this team can grow and the biggest place where things can be different. If the Magic are going to have another 22-win season, they're going to allow 5-6 minute stretches where they just don't do anything on either end. And they find themselves down by 15, and now they're climbing uphill the whole way. If they have taken a step up, if they have leveled up, that 5 to 6 minute stretch that we experienced last year is going to be 3 minutes, going to be 2 minutes. Going to be sprinkled in maybe throughout the game and little 30-second, 1 minute, 1.5 minute intervals. So instead of this long stretch where the Magic find themselves down 15, a 6-point lead turns into a 4-point deficit. You can live with that. You can escape that. But it's stopping that. That's the key. And that's where the Magic have to grow and have to get better. Keeping their focus, falling down the hill, but grabbing hold of the rope once again. That's where this team can really, really grow. And that's what we'll be watching tonight against the Pistons. We'll talk a little bit about the opponent and what to expect from Detroit, as they are also a team on the rise and also growing. We'll get to them coming up here in just a moment. So the Detroit Pistons are, I think, a really interesting team. I really like what Detroit did, drafting Jalen Duren, drafting Jaden Ivey, adding another guard, a dynamic guard and playmaker next to Cade Cunningham. I really like the veterans they brought in. Nerlens Noel is set to play tonight. He did not play in their last game. Bringing in a veteran like Bojan Bogdanovic. I think Detroit did some low risk moves that will make the team better this year and kind of set their table a little bit better this year. Detroit, though, is still very much a team like Orlando that's still trying to figure out their way and the best way for them to succeed. They have a little bit more established shooters than Orlando does, and Saddiq Bey and Bojan Bogdanovic. Cade Cunningham is really good at getting into the lane, but the reason why Jaden Ivey was so attractive perhaps was they need another downhill guard, another guard who could get themselves in the paint. This game is going to be a battle of who can get into the paint and kick out, and then ultimately who can make shots, because Detroit and Orlando last year, despite Saddiq Bey, were two of the worst shooting teams in the entire league. They did not shoot the ball well at all. And that's why they ended up with the pick that they ended up with one of the top picks in the draft, in Jaden Ivey. This game is going to be interesting just because it's two young teams. And so there's going to be a lot of mistakes. There's going to be a lot of opportunity to take advantage of those mistakes. And if there's one thing that I really like about what Detroit does, is they do a good job taking advantage of your mistakes. They want to get out and run. They want to force some turnovers. They want to beat you down the court. They like Orlando are not going to be afraid to shoot. Isaiah Stewart's going to take some threes. And that's a shot you give up. You want him shooting those shots, but so if he beats you that way, you can certainly live with it. But at the end of the day, what we're looking here is two teams still trying to find their identity and trying to find out what their mode for success is. And that creates an interesting matchup, obviously, for an opening game, because everyone's kind of dipping their toes in the water and trying to figure out what works and what doesn't. I like Orlando's size against Detroit here. I like that Orlando can put a big lineup against everyone. If Cole Anthony's probably going to end up starting, Cole Anthony guarding Jaden Ivey or Cade Cunningham is going to be a weak spot. And so the Magic's help defense has to be on point. And if Detroit's able to get into the paint, they've got to know where the three-point shooters are. One area where I thought Orlando really struggled in the preseason was collapsing into the paint a little bit too much and not getting out to the three-point line to contest shots. I thought they gave up a lot of those three-pointers. But the other area that this Magic team has to be concerned about is offensive rebounding. Generally, Orlando did a good job on the glass in the preseason, but there were definitely a few moments where opponents got big offensive rebounds. And Isaiah Stewart is a big dude. He is going to get offensive rebounds. If you give him space, if you don't get a body on him, if you do not box him out, he is going to get offensive rebounds and suck up a lot of space in the paint. That's going to be a huge factor in this game. So the two stats I would watch for that are going to determine this game. Let me make three stats. 3-point field goal percentage. Whoever shoots better is probably going to win because there's going to be a lot of settled threes because the offenses are rough still. Offensive rebounding with a lot of 3-pointers going up. Who's going to attack the offensive glass? Who's going to get those extra second chance opportunities, those stolen points? And finally, turnovers. Both of these teams want to run. They're not that effective in the half court. Who's going to take advantage of the other team's mistakes? Whose defense is going to step up and take advantage of the other team's mistakes, get out in transition, and make the other team pay for those mistakes, for those youthful mistakes that are going to happen? Orlando struggled a lot with turnovers. They struggled a lot with fouling, so those easy points are also going to come into play. If they can limit both of those, and the turnovers came down as the preseason went on, so I am a little bit encouraged by that. If those can come down, whoever controls the pace of the game that way, I think that's ultimately who wins this game. At the end of the day, Cade Cunningham might have been going through the motions a little bit in preseason. Detroit can have some abysmal shooting nights. So they could get hot like we saw late last season. They could go ice cold. And you just don't know what you're going to get offensively from either of these teams. So if Orlando focuses on their defense, using their defense to create some offense, they play smart offense, even if they're missing shots, if they're able to control the glass, if they're able to protect the ball and prevent turnovers, if they're just getting shots and not turnovers, there's a very good chance Orlando can win this game. What I really liked about this matchup is, we're not playing a team that it feels like it's going to be an uphill climb. This is a game where the Magic can make some mistakes. Detroit is going to punish you for mistakes, but they're not going to bury you. They're not going to kill you for them. And if the Magic are able to limit their mistakes, if they are able to make sure that they don't last super long, they're going to have a real chance to win this game. And a chance to settle in, get comfortable, and then push forward. It's going to be a really exciting game. I'm really looking forward to tonight's game, not just because it's the first game, but because it is this kind of game. It's a measuring stick game against a growth peer to see where this team is at. It's going to be a lot of fun too, because I'm excited to see this team. This team is a really fun group so far. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Of course, find me on Twitter at @PhilipRR_OMD. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all the fun places to download podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can follow us there on Twitter at @OMagicDaily. Now that you're done listening to us, go make your second listen Locked On NBA. The NBA season is here, and our local NBA experts and insiders have you covered on and off the court all season long. All the biggest stories around the NBA every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. It's available on YouTube, Odyssey, and wherever you get your podcasts. That's going to do it for me today, though. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Enjoy opening night. We'll see you all tomorrow to recap tonight's game, break down what happened, and start to look ahead to the next game because they never stop for 82 games. Until then, for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.